Welcome to ICANN Media. I'm your host, Rob Hislop. In this podcast, we continue our interview with Communica Public Affairs Principal and Senior Consultant, Doug Ford. In part one of this three-part series, we had a chance to meet Ford and hear a little bit about his connection with the oil industry. And that connection has been in place for a number of years, and his client list is quite impressive as well. It includes Enbridge's Northern Gateway Pipeline, Suncor, and Imperial Oil as well. Today, Doug, we'll start with your thoughts on confronting many of the oil industry's critics head-on. Now, not necessarily an attack, but with stats provided by the government, perhaps, figures that maybe can't be disputed as easily by saying that they just belong to the industry.
I inherently agree that education both ways is absolutely vital. You cannot fight emotion, however, strictly with facts. Facts tend to get washed by through emotional arguments. I do believe the industry needs to do a number of things. First of all, they need to be upfront. They need to be visible. They need to go to the more uncomfortable places and engage. That's what consultation is all about. Consultation is not about talking to our friends. Consultation is seeking input from a wide variety of spectrums. Secondly, industry needs to not be afraid to confront. Confront in a very polite but forceful manner. When mistruths are said about pipeline infrastructure, about oil sand development, about mining, about a variety of resource development, those need to be taken on upfront. And if you do that and you engage in dialogue, that's really important. One of the ironies of this whole thing is by not engaging, you have an individual that may have no technical, no scientific, no credible background actually being held on par with those that do. And so that's a bit of a frightful scenario. It'd be like an individual saying that they are on par with a neurosurgeon when it comes to understanding the complexities of brain operations. Reality is that they're not. You should confront them. You should talk about the mistruths. You should acknowledge the deficiencies and then move from there.
Recently, Doug, I was talking to a friend of mine who is a reporter in small town Alberta, and he was telling me about an event that Enbridge hosted in this community. And what struck him about it was, whereas in the past, the company might just send out a corporate suit to do all the talking and not really listen to the people who were attending, he said that this time there seemed to be a lot more engagement with residents.
Yeah, in many cases, industry are their own worst enemies, in the sense that they want to have all the facts straight. They want to be able to be absolutely clear on what they can and cannot do. The reality of engagement is much more diffuse than that, and so I applaud Enbridge. In fairness and in full transparency, we have worked and continue the work on Northern Gateway, and with a variety of other Enbridge projects. So we do so very proudly. But it's important to build trust at the local level. And the way that you do that is not by coming in with predefined positions, but actually seeking input, taking that input internally, dissecting it, see what can and cannot be done. Where it can be done, showing how it's reflected in terms of timing or procedures or construction schedules. Where it can't be done, talk about alternatives. And that's the way you build success.
Doug, do you think now that perhaps part of the industry's problem is its history? Because it could certainly be argued that big oil has done things in the past that would certainly help bolster the argument that it does have a controversial, if not bad, reputation.
I believe that industry as a whole tends to pay more for past practices than current procedures. And so the reality is most industry today is exceptionally focused on safety and environmental management. They have a lot of procedures in place to do that. The central question is, are things better today than they were 20, 30, 50 years ago? Unequivocally, without question, yes. And they need to be able to stand up and do two things. One, acknowledge where shortcomings were in the past, and we all have shortcomings. And secondly, very proudly stand up where they are today.
Coming up in our third and final part of the interview with Doug Ford from Communica Public Affairs, we'll be talking to him about the ongoing PR battle, especially when someone like Neil Young comes up to Alberta and visits the oil sands and refers to it as a war zone. We'll get Doug Ford's perspective on this and how he thinks the oil industry can forge ahead. I'm Rob Hislop for ICANN Media.